Benji, a young boy who's learned to survive on his own, and Owen Reese, a man who thought he had everything, until an unexpected accident changes both their lives forever. When Benji courageously saves Owen's life, a simple act of kindness turns into something far greater than either of them could have imagined. But even as they find new hope and family in each other, their bond is put to the test by old wounds, unexpected challenges, and a mysterious figure from the past who threatens to tear it all apart. Through highs and lows, this unlikely family discovers the true meaning of resilience, loyalty, and love. Will they hold together through the storms of the past? And can they overcome the secrets that resurface to haunt them? Find out in this heartwarming story of family and forgiveness. If you enjoy stories of love, courage, and second chances, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Let us know in the comments what family means to you, and join us on this unforgettable journey. Let's get started. The night was bitterly cold, with the wind biting through the narrow alleyways that crisscrossed the downtown district. Benji Carter, a 12-year-old boy with untamed brown hair and an oversized, worn-out hoodie, wrapped his arms tightly around himself as he sat tucked between two large dumpsters. The noises of the city filled his ears. Honking cars, distant sirens, laughter from a nearby bar. Yet he felt painfully alone. He didn't know how long he'd been on his own anymore. Time seemed to blur into one endless stretch of hungry days and sleepless nights. His stomach growled, and he peered out of the alley, watching as people hurried past on the sidewalk, their warm coats and scars a painful contrast to his own threadbare clothing. Maybe tomorrow will be better, he murmured to himself, shivering as he looked up at the starless sky. Benji tried to keep his hope alive, but tonight, with nothing but a crust of bread saved from a dumpster, hope felt like a lie. Just then, his gaze fell on a tall, well-dressed man on the other side of the street, oblivious to his surroundings as he spoke animatedly into his phone. The man, Owen Reese, looked like someone who had everything in the world: expensive suit, polished shoes, and an expression of determined confidence. But even from a distance, Benji could see a hint of tension in his face, a tightness in his jaw. Benji watched him with a pang of curiosity and envy. What would it be like to walk through the world without fear, without constantly having to wonder where your next meal would come from? He wondered what the man was saying, his body language intense as he gestured with his phone. Then in a split second, something terrible happened. The man stepped off the curb, unaware that the streetlight had turned red, and a speeding car hurtled toward him. The driver honked, but Owen was too focused on his conversation to react in time. Without thinking, Benji bolted from his hiding place, his feet pounding against the pavement as he ran toward the man. He barely had time to register what he was doing. All he knew was that he couldn't let someone get hurt if he could stop it. "Watch out," he yelled, throwing himself at Owen, pushing him out of the car's path. The screech of tires and the smell of burning rubber filled the air as the car swerved, missing them by inches. They landed hard on the sidewalk, with Owen looking dazed and confused. For a moment, neither of them moved, both shaken by the close call. Owen blinked, trying to process what had happened, and then he looked down at Benji, who was trembling and out of breath, his hands scraped and dirty. "Kid," Owen said, his voice hoarse, You saved my life." Owen helped Benji to his feet, studying him with a mixture of gratitude and surprise. "What's your name?" he asked, still slightly out of breath. "Benji," the boy replied, avoiding his gaze. He glanced down, suddenly self-conscious about his ragged clothes and dirty hands. This man was probably going to walk away and forget all about him now. People like Owen Reese didn't linger long around kids like him. Owen seemed to notice his discomfort and cleared his throat. "Thank you, Benji. I mean it. I don't know how to repay you." Benji shrugged, trying to act casual even though his heart was racing. "You don't have to. Just be careful next time, okay?" Owen frowned, noting the dark circles under the boy's eyes, the hollow cheeks that spoke of hunger. "Listen," he said slowly, "let me get you something to eat. It's the least I can do." Benji hesitated, but his stomach rumbled loudly, and he nodded, trying to play it off with a shy smile. "Okay, thanks." As they walked to a nearby diner, Owen asked, Do you have a place to stay? Family. Benji's expression turned guarded, and he looked away. I'm fine. I've got friends. A place I go sometimes. Owen didn't push him, but he felt a pang of concern. He knew the look of someone trying to survive alone. For reasons he couldn't quite explain, he felt an urge to help this boy, to make sure he was safe. They reached the diner, and Owen ordered a hot meal for Benji, watching as the boy devoured the food with a mix of hunger and embarrassment. After a few moments of silence, Owen cleared his throat. Look, Benji, I really do want to repay you for what you did. Is there anything you need? Benji thought for a moment, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. There was something he'd always wanted, but he didn't dare ask for it, not from a stranger. Well, he said hesitantly, I always wondered what it'd be like to have a dad. Just for a day. Someone to pretend, His voice dropped to a whisper, as if ashamed of his own wish. Owen's heart twisted at the simplicity of the request. This boy had saved his life and asked for nothing more than a taste of what most children took for granted. He nodded slowly, his voice gentle. I think I can do that, Benji. How about tomorrow? We'll spend the day together, and I'll show you what it's like. The boy's eyes lit up, and he gave a shy nod, a small smile breaking through his guarded expression. Really? You do that? Owen smiled back. Really? The next morning, Owen picked Benji up from the spot where they'd agreed to meet. The boy looked more nervous than he'd been the previous night, fidgeting with the hem of his hoodie. But Owen greeted him with a warm smile, hoping to put him at ease. They spent the day like a father and son might, going to the movies, visiting the arcade, and laughing over pizza at a busy pizzeria. Benji's face was alight with joy, and for a few hours, he allowed himself to believe that this was real, that he had someone who cared, someone who wanted him around. As the day wore on, Owen found himself feeling something he hadn't expected, a fierce protectiveness toward Benji. The boy was bright and brave, but he was also vulnerable, a child who had faced far too much on his own. Thank you, Benji said as they walked back to the car, his voice barely audible. Today was the best day I've ever had. Owen put a hand on his shoulder, his voice choked with emotion. I'm glad, Benji. I am. But as they drove back, Owen's mind raced. He couldn't just leave this boy to fend for himself after today. Not when he knew what he knew. He felt a responsibility, a duty he hadn't anticipated. Back at the diner where they had met, Owen took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts before he spoke. Benji, he began, his voice steady but hesitant. I don't know your whole story, but I want to help. Really help. Would you be open to maybe staying with me? Just until you find a more permanent place? Benji looked at him, wide-eyed, hope and fear mingling in his gaze. You mean, you'd let me stay with you? Owen nodded, a soft smile on his lips. It'd be honored. You saved my life, Benji. The least I can do is make sure you're safe. The boy swallowed hard, fighting back tears. No one had ever offered him something like this before. A home, a chance to belong, even if only temporarily. With a trembling voice, he whispered, Thank you, Mr. Reese. As Owen led Benji to his car, he felt a strange mixture of relief and determination. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he was ready to face it. He'd promised to help Benji, and he intended to keep that promise, no matter what it took. The first morning in Owen's apartment was strange for Benji. He woke up in a bed, a real bed, wrapped in soft blankets that smelled faintly of laundry detergent. For a few moments, he lay still, his mind catching up with the fact that he wasn't out on the streets, huddled under layers of worn fabric or against a cold wall. Down the hall, he heard Owen moving around, his voice low as he spoke on the phone. Benji sat up, feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. He knew this arrangement might not last, but he was determined to enjoy it while it did. Quietly, he slipped out of bed and padded down the hall, peeking into the kitchen. Owen glanced up, a warm smile breaking across his face. Morning, Benji. Did you sleep okay? Benji nodded, a shy smile creeping onto his face. It was really nice. Owen placed a plate of pancakes on the table, the sight of which made Benji's eyes widen. Go ahead, dig in, he said, watching as Benji tentatively picked up his fork, his movements careful, as if he were afraid he might lose it all in an instant. As they ate, Owen tried to keep things light, sharing a few stories about his own childhood, which drew a few chuckles from Benji. By the time breakfast was over, Benji felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time, a sense of comfort, as if he was where he was meant to be. Over the next few days, Owen and Benji began to establish a routine. Owen, who was used to living alone and keeping a strict schedule, found himself adjusting his habits to accommodate Benji's needs. Simple things like making sure there was extra food in the fridge or leaving the bathroom light on at night became second nature. For Benji, life at Owen's apartment was both thrilling and unsettling. He found himself waiting for the moment Owen would change his mind, when he'd be asked to leave. It was hard for him to believe that this was real, that someone genuinely wanted him around. One afternoon, as Owen was working in his office, Benji wandered in, his face thoughtful. "Mr. Reese, why did you let me stay here?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Owen paused, considering the question. "Because I think you're worth it, Benji. You're a good kid, and you deserve a chance to feel safe, to have a place where you can just be yourself." Benji looked down, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Thanks," he mumbled, feeling a warmth in his chest that was unfamiliar yet comforting. One morning, Owen received a call from a social worker named Diane Turner, who'd heard through an acquaintance that he'd taken in a young boy from the streets. She was concerned, and though Owen was initially defensive, he realized that Diane was just trying to ensure Benji's safety. A few days later, she visited the apartment to speak with both Owen and Benji, wanting to assess the situation. Benji watched her warily, his eyes filled with suspicion as she sat across from him in the living room. "So, Benji," Diane began, her tone gentle but professional, "how are you feeling about staying here with Mr. Reese? Is everything all right?" Benji glanced at Owen, unsure of how much to reveal. But he saw Owen's reassuring nod and took a deep breath. I like it here. It feels good. Safe." Diane looked thoughtful, nodding slowly. She turned to Owen. "This isn't the usual process, Mr. Reese. But if you're serious about helping him, there are legal steps we need to discuss." Owen met her gaze, his voice steady. "I'm serious, Diane. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to keep Benji safe." Diane nodded, her expression softening. "All right then, we'll start with a temporary guardianship agreement and see how things go." After Diane left, Owen felt a mixture of relief and determination. He was in this for the long haul, and he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Enrolling Benji in school was a challenge. He'd missed years of regular education, and the thought of attending a new school made him nervous. On his first day, Owen walked him to the entrance, giving him a reassuring smile as they stood outside. "Just remember, Benji," Owen said, his voice gentle. "No one expects you to be perfect. Just try your best, and if you need anything, I'm just a call away." Benji nodded, swallowing hard. "Okay, nerdies, I'll try." The day was rough. Benji felt out of place, overwhelmed by the noise and the constant questions from teachers. He struggled to keep up in his classes, and by the time the final bell rang, he was exhausted and ready to retreat back into his shell. When Owen picked him up, he saw the fatigue in Benji's eyes and gave him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "First days are always tough," he said kindly. "But you made it through, and that's what matters." Benji looked at him, surprised by the lack of judgment in his tone. "Thanks, Mr. Reese. I didn't think I'd make it." Owen smiled, a warmth in his eyes. "I knew you would. You're stronger than you think, Benji." Over the following weeks, Benji's bond with Owen grew stronger. They shared quiet evenings watching movies, cooking simple meals together, and occasionally playing games Owen hadn't touched in years. With each passing day, Benji began to let his guard down, allowing himself to trust Owen a little more. One night, as they sat on the couch watching a movie, Benji turned to Owen, his face serious. "Mr. Reese, do you think it's possible for someone like me to have a real family?" Owen looked at him, surprised by the question. "Benji, you're already part of a family. This one." Benji's eyes widened, a mixture of disbelief and hope flickering across his face. "Really?" Owen nodded, his voice firm. "Absolutely. Family isn't just about where you come from. It's about who you choose to care about, who chooses to stand by you." Benji felt a lump in his throat, the words hitting him with unexpected force. For the first time, he began to believe that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone. Just as things seemed to be settling into a steady rhythm, they were thrown off course when Benji had a run-in with a group of kids at school who picked on him for his quiet nature and shabby clothing. The incident shook him, dredging up old insecurities and fears. That evening, he came home with a bruised cheek and a haunted look in his eyes. Owen's heart sank as he sat down beside him, gently examining the bruise. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked softly. Benji shook his head, his voice barely a whisper. They call me a charity case. Said I don't belong." Owen's face hardened, anger simmering beneath the surface. "Benji, don't ever listen to people who try to bring you down. You have as much right to be here as anyone else." Benji looked down, a trace of shame in his expression. "It's just, I feel like they're right sometimes. Like maybe I don't belong." Owen placed a hand on Benji's shoulder, his voice steady and reassuring. "Benji, you belong here. Don't ever doubt that. You're stronger than you think, and I'm here for you. Always." The boy looked up, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Thank you, Mr. Reese." The incident at school marked a turning point for Owen. He realized that simply providing Benji with shelter wasn't enough. He needed to give him the tools to face the world with confidence. He signed Benji up for activities outside of school, encouraging him to try new things, and they began working on small projects together like building a model airplane and working on science experiments. Through these activities, Benji's self-confidence began to grow, and Owen watched with pride as he slowly came out of his shell. One evening, as they finished assembling the model airplane, Benji looked at Owen, a newfound determination in his eyes. "Mr. Reese, I think I want to stay here. I mean with you. For good, if that's okay." Owen's heart swelled with emotion, and he placed a hand on Benji's shoulder. "Benji, I'd be honored. And if it's up to me, you'll always have a place here." The boy smiled, his expression a mix of relief and happiness. For the first time in his life, he felt secure, as if he truly had a place to call home. One evening, just as the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the city, Owen received a call that shook him to his core. The voice on the other end was calm, yet serious. "Mr. Reese, this is Detective Rhodes. We've located someone we believe you might know, a woman who's been reported missing for a long time. I think you should come down to the station." Owen's heart raced as he processed the words. Could it be? Could they have found Emily after all these years? He glanced at Benji, who was sitting on the couch, working on a school project. "Benji," he said, his voice wavering slightly. "I need to go out for a bit. I'll be back soon." Benji looked up, concern etched on his face. "Is everything okay?" Owen forced a reassuring smile. "Yeah, just something unexpected came up. I'll explain when I get back." As he drove to the station, Owen's mind was a whirlwind of memories and emotions. It had been so long since Emily's disappearance that he had almost given up hope. The pain had dulled, but the thought of seeing her again reignited feelings he'd buried deep down. At the station, Owen was led to a small room where a woman sat, her back turned toward him. She had long, tangled hair and a tired look about her, as if life had been relentless and unkind. "Emily," Owen whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The woman turned slowly, her eyes meeting his with a look of confusion and recognition. Her face was thinner, and her eyes held a haunted expression, but there was no mistaking it. It was her. "Owen," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Her hand reached out, trembling, as if to confirm that he was real. They embraced, the weight of years spent apart falling away as they clung to each other. After a long moment, they pulled back, studying each other's faces, both shocked and relieved. "What happened to you, Emily?" Owen asked, his voice filled with pain and a hint of anger. Emily's eyes clouded with memories, some painful and some distant. "I don't remember everything. I was lost, wandering for so long. There was an accident, and then I just disappeared." Owen took a deep breath, his heart aching at the thought of all she must have endured. "You're safe now. You're home." As they drove back to the apartment, Owen felt a surge of anxiety. He'd taken Benji in with the assumption that he was on his own. How would he explain this new development to both Benji and Emily? And how would Emily feel about Benji? He parked outside the apartment and turned to Emily. There's someone you need to meet. It's hard to explain, but just know that he's important to me. Emily looked at him with a curious expression, nodding slowly. Inside, Benji looked up as they entered, his eyes widening at the sight of Emily. He seemed uncertain, glancing at Owen with a questioning look. Benji, Owen said gently, this is Emily. My wife. She was lost for a long time, but she's back now. Benji's face fell, and Owen saw a flash of fear in his eyes. He tried to hide it, but Owen knew him too well by now. Emily approached Benji, her gaze soft. So, you're Benji, she said, her voice warm but a bit distant. Owen's told me a lot about you. Benji managed a nod, though he couldn't quite meet her gaze. It's nice to meet you, ma'am. An awkward silence hung in the air, the reality of their new dynamic settling over them. Owen's heart ached as he watched both Benji and Emily struggle to process their new reality. The days following Emily's return were challenging. While she and Owen tried to reconnect, Benji felt more and more like an outsider. He struggled with feelings of jealousy and insecurity, fearing that Emily's presence might mean the end of his place in Owen's life. One evening, as they all sat down for dinner, Benji barely touched his food, his shoulders hunched as if he were shrinking in on himself. Emily noticed, her voice gentle as she spoke. Are you okay, Benji? He looked up, forcing a smile. Yeah, just not that hungry, I guess. Owen's heart ached at the sight, and he tried to lighten the mood. Hey, remember that science project we were working on? We're almost done. Maybe you can show Emily your progress. Benji nodded, his smile strained. But inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was losing something precious. He had never thought of Owen as his alone, but now, with Emily there, he feared he'd be pushed aside. Later that night, as Owen was tucking him in, Benji looked up, his eyes filled with unshed tears. Mr. Reese, do you still want me here? Now that she's back. Owen's heart shattered at the question. He sat on the edge of the bed, his hand resting on Benji's shoulder. Benji, your family. Emily coming back doesn't change that. I promised I'd be here for you, and I meant it. Benji looked down, whispering, it just feels different now. Owen pulled him into a gentle hug, his voice soft. It's a change, yes, but you're a part of my life, Benji. Don't ever doubt that. Emily's return brought its own challenges. She struggled to adjust to life after so much time away, haunted by fragmented memories and feelings of guilt. She often found herself retreating into herself, distant and withdrawn, as if she were still lost. One afternoon, she confided in Owen, her voice laced with sorrow. I miss so much. The life we were supposed to have. And now everything is different. Owen took her hands in his voice filled with compassion. Emily, I understand, but we can build something new. And Benji, he's part of that. Emily looked away, unsure. He's a good boy, Owen. I see that. But it's hard. I feel like I'm intruding on something between you two. Owen squeezed her hands, his gaze steady. Benji saved me, Emily. After you disappeared, he gave me a reason to keep going. And now, we're all here. Together. Emily nodded, though the uncertainty lingered in her eyes. One stormy evening, as thunder rolled through the sky, Benji woke up from a nightmare, his heart pounding. The fear from his dream lingered, and he found himself drawn to Owen's room. Standing in the doorway, he hesitated, feeling guilty for intruding. Owen noticed him and patted the bed, inviting him to sit. Bad dream? Benji nodded, his voice barely audible. Yes, sorry for bothering you. Owen shook his head, placing a comforting hand on Benji's shoulder. You're never a bother, Benji. I'm here. Okay. As they sat in silence, Emily appeared in the doorway, watching them with a mixture of emotions. She approached slowly, sitting down beside them. After a moment, she spoke softly. Benji, I know things have been strange since I got here. I want you to know that I don't want to take anything away from you. Owen, he cares about you a lot. And so do I. Benji looked at her, surprise flickering across his face. Really? Emily nodded, her voice tender. You're part of this family. I'd like to be a part of it too, if you'll let me. Benji managed a small smile, and Owen wrapped his arms around both of them, pulling them close. For the first time, they felt like a family, despite the uncertainty that still lingered. In the following weeks, the tension in the household began to ease. Emily and Benji found common ground, sharing quiet moments as they got to know each other better. Emily began helping Benji with his homework, offering gentle guidance, and Benji started sharing little stories with her, opening up bit by bit. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Benji looked up, his eyes shining with a mix of joy and vulnerability. I've never had this before. A family, I mean. Emily reached out, placing a hand on his. Well, you have one now, Benji, and we're not going anywhere. Owen watched them, his heart swelling with gratitude and relief. This was what he dreamed of, a family united by choice, love, and resilience. Owen found himself falling in love with Emily all over again, not just for the woman she had been, but for the strength and compassion she now showed. He admired her resilience and the way she embraced Benji, creating a bond that deepened with every passing day. One evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the stars, Owen took her hand, his voice soft. I never thought I'd get this back. Our life, our family. Emily leaned against him, her voice filled with quiet joy. Neither did I, but I'm so grateful we did. They sat in comfortable silence, both feeling the weight of the past slowly lifting, replaced by the hope of a future built on love, forgiveness, and family. The family decided to spend a Saturday together at the county fair, hoping to create a joyful memory. It was Benji's first fair, and he was brimming with excitement as they approached the gates, his eyes wide as he took in the vibrant sights, sounds, and smells. Look at the Ferris wheel, he exclaimed, practically bouncing in place. Emily chuckled, glancing at Owen. He's going to want to try every ride, isn't he? Owen grinned. Let him. We could all use a little fun. The day was filled with laughter as they rode bumper cars, played games, and ate more cotton candy than they could handle. Benji even won a small stuffed animal in a ring toss game, which he proudly presented to Emily. It's for you, he said shyly, his cheeks turning pink. Emily's eyes softened, and she took the stuffed animal with a smile. Thank you, Benji. That simple gesture, a gift of gratitude and acceptance, felt like a turning point. Emily felt her heart open a little more, embracing this boy who had become such a vital part of her life. As life began to settle into a routine, Emily found herself haunted by flashes of the years she'd spent lost, struggling to survive on her own. Despite the comfort of her home and the warmth of her family, memories surfaced in unexpected ways, stirring up old fears and insecurities. One night, after a particularly vivid nightmare, Emily sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, gazing out at the dark, quiet neighborhood. Owen joined her, his expression filled with concern. Another bad dream? He asked gently. She nodded, a faint tremble in her hands. Sometimes it feels like I'm still out there, alone, even though I know I'm here with you. Owen took her hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. You're safe now, Emily. We're here, and we're not going anywhere. Emily managed a small smile, the weight of his words grounding her. She knew he was right, but the memories were hard to shake, reminding her that building a life together after so much time apart would take work, courage, and patience. As Benji's first semester of school continued, he faced mounting challenges with his coursework. His classmates advanced while he struggled to catch up, and he felt isolated, as if he'd always be one step behind. One afternoon, his teacher, Mrs. Grant, pulled him aside after class, her tone gentle but firm. Benji, I know you're trying your best, but I think you could use a little extra help. How would you feel about meeting with a tutor? Benji hesitated, his face flushing. The idea of needing extra help made him feel embarrassed, like he was less capable than the other kids. But Mrs. Grant's expression was kind, and he trusted her enough to nod. Later that evening, he reluctantly told Owen and Emily about the tutoring. They both responded with encouragement, assuring him that he wasn't alone in his struggles. Needing help doesn't make you weak, Benji, Owen said, his voice steady. It just means you're strong enough to ask for it. Emily nodded in agreement. And we're here to support you, every step of the way. Don't ever feel like you have to handle things on your own. Their words reassured him, and he felt a spark of hope. Maybe he wasn't as alone in his journey as he'd once thought. One evening, a fierce storm rolled in, the wind howling and rain battering against the windows. Benji, who was afraid of thunderstorms, lay awake in bed, his heart pounding with each clap of thunder. Unable to bear the fear, he crept out of his room and padded down the hallway, finding Owen and Emily sitting together in the living room. They looked up as he entered, and Emily opened her arms in a silent invitation. Benji hesitated, then crossed the room and curled up beside her, feeling her arms wrap around him in a comforting embrace. Owen joined them, his reassuring presence calming Benji's racing heart. As the storm raged outside, the three of them sat together, cocooned in warmth and safety. Benji felt a surge of gratitude for this family, for the first time truly believing that he belonged. "I never had this before," he murmured, barely audible. "People who care." Emily tightened her hold on him, her voice soft. "You have it now, Benji, and you always will." In the weeks that followed, Benji and Emily grew closer, their bond deepening as they spent more time together. Emily took an active role in helping Benji with his studies, guiding him patiently through his lessons and encouraging him when he felt discouraged. One evening, as they sat at the kitchen table going over math problems, Benji looked up, his gaze thoughtful. "Emily, do you think you could maybe help me with my science project too?" Emily smiled, touched by his request. "Of course, Benji. I'd love to." As they worked together, she felt a growing warmth in her heart, realizing that Benji was not just Owen's responsibility, but hers as well. She had once feared that she would never find her place in this family, but now, as she helped Benji navigate the challenges of school and life, she knew she belonged. For the first time, Benji felt like he had someone who would support him no matter what. Their relationship was still new and tentative, but it held a promise of something lasting, a bond that neither of them had expected but both cherished deeply. As a way of celebrating Benji's recent progress at school, Owen and Emily planned a surprise outing to a nearby lake. Benji's excitement was palpable as they packed a picnic, brought along fishing rods, and drove to the lake on a bright Saturday morning. The day was filled with laughter as they fished, told stories, and explored the woods surrounding the lake. Benji felt a sense of freedom and joy he hadn't known was possible, his worries melting away in the presence of his family. At one point, as they sat on the shore skipping stones, Owen looked at Benji and Emily, a soft smile on his face. "This is exactly what I'd always hoped for, a family that loves and supports each other." Emily reached over, squeezing his hand. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Benji nodded, a radiant smile lighting up his face. "Yeah, I never thought I'd have this. Thank you, both of you." In that moment, they felt like a family in every sense of the word, bound by love, trust, and shared experiences. Just as things seemed to be falling into place, a letter arrived one morning, addressed to Emily. She opened it with a sense of foreboding, her heart sinking as she read the familiar handwriting. It was from an old friend she hadn't heard from in years, someone who had known her during the years she'd been missing. The letter stirred up memories she had tried to leave behind, reminding her of the struggles and pain she'd endured. Emily didn't tell Owen or Benji about the letter right away, but her mood grew tenser and more distant in the days that followed. She felt the weight of her past pressing down on her, as if she might never truly escape it. One evening, Owen noticed her distress and gently pressed her to talk. "Emily, I can tell something's bothering you. Whatever it is, you don't have to face it alone." After a long silence, she showed him the letter, her voice trembling. "It's just sometimes it feels like no matter how far I run, the past will always find me." Owen wrapped his arms around her, his voice filled with quiet strength. "We'll face it together, Emily. You don't have to carry this alone." Her eyes filled with gratitude, and she leaned into his embrace, feeling a renewed sense of hope. She knew there would always be challenges, but with Owen and Benji by her side, she could face anything. Despite the lingering shadows of the past, the family grew stronger, their bond deepening as they shared their struggles and victories. Emily found peace in her role as a mother, and Benji flourished under the love and support of his family. One evening, as they sat together watching a movie, Benji looked around at Owen and Emily, a sense of contentment settling over him. This is what I always dreamed of," he said softly, his voice filled with wonder. "A family, a place where I belong." Owen and Emily exchanged a glance, their hearts full as they reached for Benji's hands, pulling him close. "You're our family, Benji," Owen said, his voice filled with emotion. "And nothing will ever change that." In that moment, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Their love was strong enough to weather any storm, a bond forged through resilience, trust, and unwavering support. They were at last truly a family. Several weeks passed in relative peace until one morning, Emily received another letter from the same friend who had reached out before. This letter was more insistent, urging her to reconnect with people from her past who were curious about her disappearance and her new life. The letter brought back waves of unresolved emotions, and a deep fear took root. She worried that her past might disrupt the life she had rebuilt with Owen and Benji. As she folded the letter, Emily's hands trembled. Owen noticed and gently took her hands in his gaze steady and reassuring. "Whatever this is, we'll handle it together," he said softly. Emily nodded, though doubt lingered in her heart. She didn't want her past to affect Benji, who had only just begun to feel secure. But she also knew that running from it wasn't an option. The tension in the household was palpable as Emily grew more distracted, unable to fully engage with Owen and Benji. Sensing the shift, Benji began to worry, fearing that perhaps Emily regretted returning to them. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Benji looked at Emily, his face full of worry. Are you leaving?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily's heart sank, and she reached across the table to take his hand. "No, Benji. I'm not going anywhere. I've just had some things from my past come up. But I'm here with you and Owen, and that's not going to change." Benji nodded, though the fear in his eyes lingered. Owen placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, giving him a reassuring smile. "Benji, we're a family. No matter what, we're sticking together." Emily saw the comfort that Owen's words brought Benji, and she felt a renewed determination to confront her past openly, knowing her family was by her side. Shortly after, Diane, the social worker who had first met Benji, returned to check on the family. She was pleased to see how much Benji had grown, both academically and emotionally, and was delighted by the strong bond he'd formed with Owen and Emily. But Diane's visit also brought a sense of reality back into their lives. She reminded them of the final steps in the adoption process and the importance of maintaining stability for Benji's well-being. Emily felt the weight of Diane's words, knowing that any disruption could threaten the family they had worked so hard to create. She knew it was time to put her past to rest so she could focus fully on her family and their future together. Diane left, encouraging them to stay connected and reassuring Benji that he had a loving home. Her visit reminded each of them of the preciousness of what they'd built and the importance of holding on to it. Determined to move forward, Emily decided to meet with her friend from the past. She explained her decision to Owen, who supported her but insisted on coming along for moral support. They met in a small cafe, where Emily's friend, Claire, was waiting with a mix of concern and curiosity. Claire had known Emily before her disappearance and was shocked to see the changes in her, but also relieved to see her alive and well. As they spoke, Emily explained the hardships she'd faced, her long recovery, and the family she'd found with Owen and Benji. Claire listened intently, her expression softening as she saw the peace that Emily had found. At the end of their conversation, Claire placed a hand on Emily's. "I'm glad you're safe, and I can see how much you care about Owen and Benji. You deserve to be happy." Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders, realizing that she didn't have to be defined by her past. She had the power to shape her future, and she knew that her future was with her family. After their meeting with Claire, Emily decided it was time to be honest with Benji about her past. She wanted him to understand where she'd come from and why she'd been distant at times. She found him in his room that evening, reading a book. Sitting beside him, she took a deep breath, her voice gentle but firm. "Benji, I want to tell you a little more about me, about where I've been and what brought me back." Benji looked at her with curiosity and a touch of apprehension, nodding silently. Emily told him about her past, her struggles, and the accident that had caused her to lose touch with her old life. She explained how lost she had felt until she found her way back, and how grateful she was to have Owen and Benji in her life. Benji listened intently, his expression thoughtful. When she finished, he reached out, placing his hand over hers. "Thank you for telling me. I know what it's like to feel lost, but I'm glad you found your way back." Emily's heart swelled with gratitude, and she wrapped him in a warm embrace, feeling their bond deepen even further. With their family dynamic stronger than ever, Owen and Emily began the official adoption process for Benji. It was an emotional journey, filled with paperwork, interviews, and evaluations, but they faced each step with determination and love. During one of their interviews, the caseworker asked Benji how he felt about becoming part of the Reese family. Benji's voice was steady as he answered, "This is my home. They're my family, and I want this more than anything." Owen and Emily exchanged a look, their hearts filled with pride and love for the boy who had come to mean so much to them. After the interview, as they walked out of the building, Benji slipped his hand into Owen's, his smile bright with hope. "Do you think it'll happen soon?" Owen ruffled his hair, smiling down at him. "I think it will, Benji, and we'll be right here with you through every step." The day of the final adoption hearing arrived, filling the family with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Benji wore a new suit, a gift from Owen and Emily, and his eyes sparkled with anticipation as they entered the courthouse. As they waited for their case to be called, Owen placed a reassuring hand on Benji's shoulder. "No matter what happens, we're here for you, Benji. This is your home, and nothing can change that." Benji nodded, taking a deep breath. He knew he'd finally found a place where he was wanted, where he belonged. The hearing went smoothly, and when the judge officially declared Benji as part of the Reese family, tears filled everyone's eyes. Owen and Emily hugged him tightly, their hearts full as they celebrated the official beginning of their life together as a family. To celebrate the adoption, Owen and Emily organized a small gathering at home, inviting close friends and family. The house was filled with laughter and warmth as everyone toasted to Benji's new beginning. As the evening wore on, Owen pulled Benji aside, handing him a small, wrapped gift. "I thought you might like this," he said, a warm smile on his face. Benji opened the gift, revealing a framed picture of the three of them taken on their recent family outing. He looked up, his eyes filled with emotion. "Thank you, Mr. Reese. Dad." Owen felt his heart swell as he hugged Benji, the simple word Dad resonating deeply. He knew that they had all found something precious in each other, a family bound not by blood, but by love and choice. In the days that followed, the family settled into a new routine, each of them filled with a sense of peace and purpose. Emily continued to work through her past, now with the support of Owen and Benji, and she felt more grounded than ever. Benji flourished in school, his confidence growing as he embraced his studies and extracurricular activities. He was no longer the quiet, uncertain boy he'd once been. He had a family that believed in him, and he was eager to make them proud. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Benji turned to Owen and Emily, his voice filled with quiet wonder. "Thank you for everything. I never thought I'd have this." Emily took his hand, her voice soft but full of conviction. "You deserve it, Benji. We're so grateful to have you in our lives." Owen wrapped an arm around them both, his heart full as he looked out at the horizon. "We're a family, and we're in this together. No matter what." In that moment, they knew that their bond was unbreakable, forged through resilience, love, and an unwavering commitment to each other. They had all faced their own struggles, but together, they had found a home. The family's newfound peace was shattered one evening by the arrival of a stranger, a man named Robert, who introduced himself as Emily's estranged brother. His unexpected appearance surprised everyone, and his presence immediately cast a shadow over the household. Owen welcomed him cautiously, sensing a hidden agenda behind Robert's sudden reappearance. Emily's reaction was more complex. She hadn't seen her brother in years, and the sight of him brought back difficult memories. "I thought you were gone for good," Emily said, her voice thick with a mix of anger and sadness. Robert shrugged, his gaze unreadable. "I heard you were back, and I wanted to see if it was true." Benji, sensing the tension, watched quietly from the corner. He'd never seen Emily look so vulnerable, and it made him uneasy. Owen decided to be direct. "What exactly are you here for, Robert?" Robert hesitated, then gave a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just to catch up? It's been a long time, hasn't it?" But Owen couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Robert's visit than he was letting on. Over the next few days, Robert stayed at a nearby motel, but he frequently visited, his behavior increasingly invasive. He questioned Emily about her life, her family, and even hinted at wanting financial support, citing hard times. Emily was torn. Part of her wanted to help him out of a sense of family obligation, but another part of her felt wary, especially as she noticed the way he looked at Owen and Benji, as if they were strangers in her life rather than family. One evening, as Robert pressed her about financial help, Owen overheard their conversation. He intervened gently but firmly, saying, "Emily doesn't owe you anything, Robert. She's worked hard to rebuild her life. She doesn't need anyone coming in and disrupting it. I'm her brother. Family looks out for each other, right?" Owen's jaw tightened, but he held back. It was becoming increasingly clear that Robert was trying to manipulate Emily, and Owen resolved to protect his family, no matter what. One evening, Benji overheard Robert talking to Emily in the kitchen. He heard Robert make a snide comment about Owen, suggesting that Emily would be better off without him and should take care of herself first. The words unsettled Benji, who had grown to love Owen as his father and couldn't imagine their family without him. Benji's heart pounded as he quietly slipped back to his room, his mind racing. He wanted to tell Owen, but he worried that it might only add to the tension. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something needed to be done. The next morning, as he sat at breakfast, he looked at Owen, trying to find the courage to speak up. "Mr. Reese, Dad, I heard Robert saying some things about you and Emily. I think he's trying to make her doubt our family." Owen's expression softened as he placed a comforting hand on Benji's shoulder. "Thank you for telling me, Benji. I promise I'll do everything I can to keep us together." Benji nodded, feeling reassured. He knew Owen wouldn't let anything come between their family, but a sense of worry lingered. Robert's manipulation came to a head one afternoon when he asked Emily for a large sum of money, claiming he needed it to start fresh. Emily's first instinct was to refuse, but Robert's words struck a nerve. "You owe me, Emily," he said harshly. "After all those years I spent looking after you." Emily's hands trembled as she weighed her options. She knew Robert's intentions weren't pure, but she also felt a pang of guilt. Before she disappeared, they had been close, and he had been her only family. But now, she had a new family to consider, and she couldn't risk jeopardizing their happiness. Taking a deep breath, she looked him in the eye and spoke with a calm conviction she hadn't felt in years. "I don't owe you anything, Robert. My family is here with Owen and Benji. I'm sorry, but I can't help you." Robert's expression turned cold, and he left without another word. But Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders, knowing she had made the right choice. Unfortunately, Robert wasn't finished. The next day, he returned in a rage, accusing Emily of abandoning him and threatening to reveal secrets from her past. His voice rose, filling the house with a sense of tension that made Benji retreat to his room, scared and confused. Owen confronted Robert, his voice steady but firm. "You're not welcome here if you're going to threaten and manipulate. This family has been through enough, and we don't need your interference." Robert sneered, his gaze flicking between Owen and Emily. "You think you can just erase your past, Emily? I could ruin this little family of yours if I wanted to." Owen's patience snapped, and he escorted Robert out of the house, making it clear that he was not to return. As the door closed, Emily exhaled shakily, her shoulders slumping in relief. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude and a trace of lingering fear. Owen wrapped an arm around her, his voice steady. We're stronger than anything he could throw at us. Emily, you don't have to face this alone. Benji joined them, his face pale but determined. We're a family, and no one can take that away from us. In the days following Robert's departure, the family rallied together, their bond strengthened by the ordeal. Emily felt a newfound sense of security and relief, knowing that Owen and Benji were with her no matter what. She confided in Owen about her fears, sharing memories of her past that she'd never spoken of before. He listened patiently, offering support without judgment, and Emily felt her burdens lighten. Benji, too, found himself feeling more secure. The ordeal had shown him that no matter what happened, Owen and Emily would fight to keep their family together. He finally felt that he had a place where he truly belonged. The family decided to celebrate their resilience with a simple picnic at the park. They packed sandwiches, snacks, and a blanket, setting up under a large tree with a view of the lake. As they ate, laughed, and shared stories, Benji felt a warmth in his heart, a sense of belonging he'd never known before. Emily leaned against Owen, a look of contentment on her face, and for the first time, they all felt like nothing could disrupt their peace. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, Owen raised his glass of sparkling cider, looking at Emily and Benji with pride and love. To family, he said, his voice thick with emotion. No matter what comes, we'll face it together. Emily and Benji echoed the toast, their hearts full of gratitude and hope. They knew they'd come a long way and that there would be more challenges ahead. But they also knew they had each other, and that was enough. With the past finally behind them, the family turned their attention toward the future. Emily found joy in her role as a mother, supporting Benji through school and life's ups and downs. Owen continued to be a steady presence, guiding and encouraging both Emily and Benji as they pursued their dreams. They began planning for Benji's future, discussing college and career aspirations. Benji, who had once felt lost and unsure, now spoke confidently about his goals, knowing he had a family who believed in him. As they spent more time together, their bond only deepened. They became more than just individuals. They became a team, a unit, a family that had faced hardship and come out stronger on the other side. A year after Benji's adoption was finalized, the family marked the anniversary with a quiet celebration. They looked back on the journey that had brought them together, reminiscing about the challenges they'd overcome and the joy they'd found. Benji presented them with a handmade scrapbook filled with photos and memories of their time together. Each page was a testament to the love, resilience, and determination that had defined their family. As they turned the pages, Owen felt a deep sense of pride. They had created something beautiful from broken pieces, and he knew that their bond would only grow stronger in the years to come. Emily wrapped an arm around Benji, her eyes shining with love. Thank you for being part of our family, Benji. You've given us more than you'll ever know. Benji smiled, his heart full. No, thank you for everything. They embraced, their hearts full as they looked toward the future with hope and anticipation, knowing that no matter what came their way, they would face it together. With the tension and drama of the past behind them, the Reese family settled into a period of peace and stability. Emily took on more responsibilities at work, finding purpose and confidence in her new role. Benji continued to thrive at school, developing friendships and exploring his interests. And Owen found joy in the everyday routines of family life, content to watch his loved ones grow and flourish. On weekends, they would often go for hikes or have movie nights at home, savoring the simple moments that felt so precious. The home was now filled with warmth and laughter, a far cry from the emptiness that had once defined it. One quiet evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Benji looked at Owen and Emily, a thoughtful expression on his face. I never knew a family could be like this, he said softly, gratitude evident in his voice. Emily smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. Neither did I, Benji. But I think we were always meant to find each other. Owen nodded, his gaze filled with pride. Family is where you're loved, supported, and believed in. And that's what we have here. They shared a quiet moment, each of them reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. They had faced so much together, and now, finally, they were at peace. As the school year progressed, Benji became involved in extracurricular activities, eventually landing a role in the school play. It was a small part, but he was excited to be part of something, and Emily and Owen were thrilled to support him. On the night of the performance, they sat in the crowded auditorium, eagerly watching as Benji took the stage. Owen felt a surge of pride as he watched Benji deliver his lines with confidence, a testament to how much he had grown over the past year. When the play ended, they cheered loudly, meeting Benji with open arms as he came off stage. Benji beamed, his face flushed with happiness as he hugged them both tightly. "You did amazing," Emily said, her voice filled with pride. Benji grinned. "Thanks. I was nervous, but knowing you guys were there made it easier." Owen ruffled his hair affectionately. "We're always here, kiddo, every step of the way." It was a simple night, but it marked a milestone for Benji, a moment when he felt fully embraced, encouraged, and celebrated by his family. As Benji's birthday approached, Owen and Emily decided to plan a surprise party, inviting a few of his closest friends and decorating the house in Benji's favorite colors. They spent the day preparing, setting up decorations, and baking a cake, eager to show Benji how much he was loved. When Benji arrived home and saw the decorations and his friends waiting, his face lit up in disbelief. He looked at Owen and Emily, his eyes shining with gratitude. "You did all this for me?" Owen nodded, smiling warmly. "Of course, Benji. You deserve it." The party was a joyful event, filled with laughter, games, and cake. At the end of the evening, Owen handed Benji a small wrapped box. "This is from us," he said, his voice full of warmth. Benji opened the box to find a locket, engraved with the words "loved, always." Inside was a small photo of the three of them, taken on one of their family outings. Benji held the locket in his hands, his expression filled with wonder. "Thank you," he whispered, overcome with emotion. "This means so much to me." Emily hugged him tightly. "You're part of our family, Benji, and we'll always be here for you." As he held the locket close, Benji felt a sense of belonging that he'd never known before. He was loved, and he was home. One evening, as they sat around a bonfire in the backyard, Owen and Emily shared stories from their past, reminiscing about the moments that had shaped them. Benji listened intently, fascinated by the glimpses into their lives before they became a family. Owen shared stories of his career, the successes and challenges he'd faced, and the strength he'd drawn from finding purpose beyond his work. Emily spoke about her recovery, her fears, and the courage it had taken to rebuild her life. Benji, feeling emboldened by their honesty, shared his own memories of life on the streets, the loneliness, the uncertainty, and the constant search for safety. Owen and Emily listened without judgment, their expressions filled with empathy and love. "We all went through our own struggles," Owen said, his voice thoughtful. "But those struggles brought us together, and now we're stronger for it." Emily nodded, her gaze soft as she looked at Benji. "We've all found something here that we didn't have before, a home, a family, and a future we can believe in." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn down to embers, each of them feeling grateful for the journey that had led them to this moment. As Benji's confidence grew, he began to talk about his dreams for the future. He expressed interest in art, and Owen and Emily encouraged him to pursue it, signing him up for weekend classes at a local art studio. On their way to his first class, Benji looked at them, his voice hesitant. "Do you really think I could be good at this?" Owen nodded, smiling proudly. "We believe in you, Benji. You're talented, and with hard work, you can do anything you set your mind to." Emily echoed his sentiment, her voice filled with warmth. "We'll be here every step of the way. Whatever you want to do, we'll support you." With their encouragement, Benji felt a renewed sense of purpose. He began to explore his artistic talents, finding joy and fulfillment in his work, and knowing that he had a family who would stand by him no matter what. One bright morning, as they gathered in the kitchen for breakfast, Owen looked around at his family, his heart filled with contentment. He thought about the journey they had all taken, the obstacles they had overcome, and the love that had grown between them. Raising his coffee cup, he spoke with quiet emotion. "We've come a long way, haven't we? This family we've built, it's the most important thing in my life." Emily and Benji both smiled, echoing his sentiment with heartfelt words of their own. They knew that they had found something precious, something that had transformed their lives in ways they hadn't imagined. In that moment, they realized that they were no longer bound by their pasts or their struggles. They were bound by love, trust, and a commitment to one another, a commitment that would carry them through whatever lay ahead. Years later, as Benji prepared to graduate high school, the family looked back on their journey with gratitude and pride. They had faced so much together, but they had emerged stronger, their bond unbreakable. Benji had grown into a confident, compassionate young man, ready to face the world with the love and support of his family behind him. Owen and Emily felt an overwhelming sense of pride, knowing that they had given him the foundation he needed to succeed. As they watched him walk across the graduation stage, their hearts swelled with joy. They knew that no matter where life took them, they would always be a family built on love, resilience, and the courage to face life's challenges together. In the years that followed, the Reese family continued to grow, each of them pursuing their dreams and supporting one another through life's ups and downs. They faced new challenges, celebrated new milestones, and embraced the future with open hearts. Benji pursued his passion for art, eventually building a career that brought him fulfillment and joy. Owen and Emily continued to support him, their love unwavering as they watched him carve out his own path. And through it all, they remained a family, bound by the experiences they had shared and the love they had given freely to one another. They had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances, but together, they had created a life filled with meaning, purpose, and joy. As they looked toward tomorrow, they knew that they could face anything together. As our story draws to a close, we hope you found inspiration in the Reese family's journey, a journey of resilience, love, and finding hope in even the most difficult times. If you enjoyed this story and want more heartwarming narratives like this one, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on our next story, filled with emotion, life lessons, and unforgettable characters. Thank you for being part of this journey, and we look forward to bringing you more stories that touch the heart. Hit that subscribe button and join us for the next chapter in our storytelling journey. See you soon.